Here we're being asked to complete the text. This is one of our prompts that really just means the main idea. So if you're asked for the underlined sentence, the overall structure, or to complete the text, really you're just being asked for the main idea. So let's read generally. So pigments give paints and dyes their color. This is a mineral-based pigment used to make a lot of colors, including red. The red one gets its color from iron oxide. Pigments can also be plant-based. These contain a high level of carbon. In a study, archaeologists tested the red pigment on decorated beads made by members of this culture this many years ago. The test showed that the pigment found on several beads contained no iron but had a high level of carbon. This finding led the researchers to conclude that. Okay, interesting here. So we have information about two main types of pigments. The red ochre gets its color from iron oxide, and the plant-based pigments have a high level of carbon. So the red pigment on decorated beads from a culture 15,000 years ago was tested, and it contained no iron but a high level of carbon. So that's going to lead us to believe that maybe it was plant-based, because earlier in the text we heard that the plant-based pigments are the ones that have high levels of carbon. So let's look for that in the answers. A says, the beads examined are the oldest surviving examples of the use of plant-based pigments for decorating beads. Okay, well, we said plant-based, and this one says plant-based, so that might be good. Let's leave it for later. B, the bead makers used plant-based pigments rather than ochre to decorate some of the beads examined in the study. So far between A and B, B is a little better, because if we're going to say this was the oldest surviving example, yes, it was 15,000 years ago, but we were never told that it was the oldest surviving example. So that's a really strong claim. So B kind of says all the same things. We know it's plant-based, which is what we were looking for. And also the idea of it being some of the beads is good, because right here we see several beads. In other words, maybe there were other beads that had different characteristics. So between A and B, we can definitely pick B. Now going to C. The bead makers preferred to use the plant-based pigments because they are much brighter than mineral-based. Well, these people lived 15,000 years ago, so we're not really going to know what their preference is, so I think we can get rid of that one. And D. The pigments used by the bead makers likely came from plants because ochre was difficult to find. Well, once again, we're seeing the thing about plants, which is kind of what we want. But do we know that ochre was difficult to find 15,000 years ago? We know almost nothing about times 15,000 years ago. So the answer that's surviving here is B.